AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions. And welcome everybody to our Ask Gun Questions show. On Saturdays, we get together and answer questions that come in to AskGunQuestions.com, like it said in the intro. Mike White is out there joining us live. If you're out there joining us live or in the future, you're part of the show, so leave us some comments. Clover's joining us from Texas. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, good to be here.
Mike is saying that the picture of Tony's head reminds him of a soccer ball, with the black and white on his beard. And then somehow it's got millions of people have gun questions. That's an interesting point. It could bring like a Tuesday topic, but since Mike is out there live, let's talk about that one right off the bat. So if this got more advertising, this show, I'm sure we get thousands of views as millions of people have gun questions. What do you think?
Nah, I don't know that millions of people have questions at one time, and then a lot of folks, percentage of that million is going to be timid, and a percentage are not going to be on YouTube, and then they're not going to be YouTube at the same time, and that whittles down really, really, really quickly.
But you're talking about live views. So if we did it like live views and we did it like simulcast on a radio on a Saturday when people might be driving to go places, because I was thinking of like that car one. I don't know if you ever listen to NPR, I think. It might have not been NPR, I don't remember. But I think they did like car talk or something like that. And they would people would call in and go, my car's making this weird noise, or the mechanic said it would need to do this, and they'd pretty much be able to diagnose or offer pretty decent advice over the radio. I don't know, you remember that show? Or did you ever hear that show? I think it's from like Boston. It's from back east.
There's been ones that are like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been others. That's just the one that I remember being the biggest one or whatever. But so I could see something like that. If we were spend as much time farting around the what's the word? It's like the tactic of keeping the show entertaining, and then some advertisement to get the word out. Yeah, I'm sure we could make it an entertaining show, and then people, the questions would be the catalyst or the theme that kept us entertaining. But I don't know if we're not really trying to be entertaining as much as answering some questions for the people who happen to be around and they're asking live or using the forum over there. So what I did this week was add a couple of questions from YouTube videos that came in, since they're pretty good questions, and I figure that's an easy way to supplement some variety. So the first one came in off the website on the 18th. Why is a Nighthawk Falcon so much? What makes it cost more than your average pistol? So do you know the Nighthawk Falcon off the top of your head?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Which one's the Falcon then?
That's a Commander, isn't it?
I don't even know. I mean, does Nighthawk... Okay, let me put it this way. Nighthawk is a company that makes 1911s. They're in Arkansas, and they make... Well, they're high-end. So is there a way to know all the Nighthawk models? I kind of got the idea that it's almost like a la carte. Like they just say, hey, what do you want? And then they make it for you. So I didn't even know there were models necessarily.
Yeah, they're base model, right? I think it's kind of what they put up, that sort of thing. And then you can tweak stuff as you go.
I mean, I have a hard enough time. Glock I can keep up with because I cared about it, and it's weird. But SIG, no way. I'm not keeping up. Smith & Wesson, there's too many of them. I'm not keeping up. Ruger, it's pretty easy because I don't really do anything to try to make it difficult. Colt, yeah, so there's some Colts that you got to waste your time learning. But then you get into custom builders like this, and that's where I draw the line. I'm like, I'm not going to try to just remember them because I got nothing else to do. I got only X amount of brain cells.
Yeah.
So I really like Nighthawk. We did a tour in 2012 when they were at the first location, and they're awesome people. They make awesome guns. It's a really cool environment. They had like 3 or 4 dogs. Let's put it this way: as they're sitting there 7 a.m. in the morning, building 1911s from scratch. They got like 3 or 4 different dogs in the different areas of the place that are just shop dogs that hang out. People bring them with them to work and stuff. They're a great company. But I didn't know. So I guess I'm looking at their thing, and they've got Thunder Ranch, Agent 2, Recon President, Counselor, and this one was a Falcon. So I don't even know where to find the different. Oh, I guess I can click on Firearms up here. You're saying it's a Commander, so that would be like a mid-size, and then you get an Agent 2, a Bob Marvel, a Border Special, a Bull Commander. I guess I could be showing this on the screen since we're online here, but Tony jumped in. Thanks for joining. I'm looking for a Falcon Nighthawk. Are you familiar with that one? Tony's not muted. You might be driving. So Falcon is a Commander according to the thing. It's $4,000. So what do you think? What's your answer? Why is a Nighthawk up so much? What does it cost more than your average pistol?
Labor.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you hear me now? All right, cool. There you go.
Yeah,
Simple as that. That's a lot of when people go, why is it that costs so much when you're talking about firearms? It's typically labor.
Yep. What country you're in matters, because in the United States, in order to keep somebody employed, you got Social Security, you got taxes, you got work environment requirements, you've got time off and all that kind of stuff. And in other countries, they take like 6 months off, but they don't get paid for all that.
And if you're creating high-end stuff like Nighthawk, you've got to employ people that know what they're doing. So
that's a good point. You're not just hiring people off the street. That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
And it's in Berryville, Arkansas, which for people that don't know, look at Arkansas. You can tell by looking at it. There's not a straight line in Arkansas. Every road in Arkansas goes up or down and around and through and whatever. So to get to Berryville probably costs, like with the gas prices these days, an extra portion of funds. But seriously, it's not a central place. Like, you're going to have to get somebody who knows what they're doing, and then they'd want to live in Berryville, Arkansas. And not that it's an unpleasant place to live. It's just a decision to live there instead of a, region or, city or whatever. So yeah, you're paying good money for that. And they literally take every gun from scratch. They take the, whatever you want to call, like the billet, the thing you start a lower from, and that gunsmith starts on it. And then that gunsmith finishes it and you get it. And if it ever has a problem, it goes back to that gunsmith. So you have a pretty intimate relationship between you and whoever's initials are engraved on that gun. So that's unlike any other company that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Well, there's a few others, but they're all boutique style places. Definitely different
like
than
individual
large
people
companies.
Instead of companies with a bunch of gunsmiths.
Yeah. Definitely different than a lot of the larger mainstream companies. Yeah, for sure.
Then materials, they're not buying just off the shelf stuff. They're either making it themselves or buying the best of the batch. So I always use the apple analogy. If you go to the apple orchard, there's going to be some apples that taste better than other apples for whatever reason, like the water here, the environment, the weather, whatever, like the seasons, the rain, whatever. Some apples taste better than others. So in that apple orchard where you figure out you like the taste of these apples, there's going to be the perfect apples. And then there's the apples that fell off the tree that were perfect, but now they fell off the tree, so they got some bruises or something. And then you got the apples that were there a little bit too long, or maybe they're a little bit too early, or maybe they got a worm in them, or maybe they didn't quite grow right and they don't look right and they taste a little weird, right? They all come off the same tree. The good ones are what you hold up as these are what we're here for. The stuff that you make applesauce with, the stuff that comes off and turns into, the stuff that goes into an apple pie, it still tastes good, but it looked ugly. That kind of stuff is still at the apple orchard. And if you don't think metal and anything else, plastics and anything else is like that, then you don't understand manufacturing. Well, so when you manufacture 1,000 things, you test them, and you test them to some characteristics, dimensions, strength, internal characteristics, magnetism. Like, what they're doing different things to different things. And when they have 1,000, if they have high enough regulations or qualifications, they're going to get just a few items that pass that test. And typically your highest end companies buy that highest grade stuff, the apples that look perfect. Then somebody else comes along and goes, what do you got left? And I go, well, we got a lot of apples that taste good, but they don't look good. Then we got a lot of apples that look good, but they fell off the tree, so they might have some bruises. And then people go, heck yeah, we'll take those. And we got them from the same orchard as the top quality stuff. And then you got your stuff that you make applesauce out of. And there's definitely going to be people that come in and go, well, I'm making my applesauce from the same place that they make the best quality stuff from. And it isn't not good quality, but you got to realize there's different levels of stuff that comes out of a machine. So that's where, when you're going to be buying the highest end stuff, they're picking the nicest apples.
Well, most everybody has been into a hardware store at some point. If you go into a hardware store, sells lumber. That's a prime example. Like there is 8 different grades of lumber. It all can come out of the same
when
exact
you go to
tree.
That grade, there's each lumber, you want to look at it, right? You want to eyeball
literally,
each one.
yeah, and you can get all 8 grades out of one tree. So like it's it's the same thing. Like materials are not created equal. I mean, can you get the lowest grade and the highest grade and build something out of it and it lasts just as long or it look just as good? Maybe if you put, more work into the lower grade. Yes, absolutely. But it's not the same thing. So, just have to keep that in mind. I mean, at the end of the day, the composition, the denseness, there's all the density, there's all kinds of things that go into it where it isn't the same.
Tony's back. Yeah, and it's sometimes just circumstances, right? You can have all the right everything possible set up, but then it rains funny and the product cures weird. So what would have been perfect got kind of ruined in the process. So you can have stuff kind of fall off of the perfection level as it's being processed, and that's costs money. So there's time and there's a lot of materials that probably get a lot of the way through the process, and then they get qualified out. Okay, this was good, but it turned out it isn't. So let's grab another one and keep going. And when you get that kind of situation, they want that kind of quality, you're going to pay for it, and that's why you're paying for it. I only can, and I've been there, so I know that they're putting a lot of time and effort into the number of smiths. That means different tools for each smith. If you were doing it smart, you'd have one smith doing rails. You'd only have to buy one set of rail tools. You'd have one smith doing sights. You'd only have to have one set of sight tools. But instead, you have every gunsmith doing everything. Every gunsmith has rail tools. Every gunsmith has sight tools. That kind of concept. And they all know how to use all of those things.
And we're talking thousands of dollars worth of tools.
And they're not like, oh, let's buy the Harbor Freight version.
Exactly. Yeah, especially 1911 tools are pricey. Jump on a Brown Hills or someplace like that. Just look at them. They're not cheap.
Okay, so we're not getting paid by Nighthawk. It's on a commercial, but I acknowledge quality and materials and artisanship when it's there. And that's, it's not the only company for sure, but Berryville, Arkansas, right next to the Sanders Museum. Cool place, cool people. If you are able to get to Arkansas, you got any interest at all, I'd recommend a visit to the Berryville Museum, but I don't know if you can visit Nighthawk or not. But you see them at shows and stuff. They're usually pretty friendly.
Well, and it gets a bad rap when you talk about that, right? When you talk about a what I would consider a boutique company and somebody like Nighthawk, Wilson Combat, same way, Lane Tactical, probably same way. There's quite a few of them out there. Terran, for example, would be boutique. And the thing is, people will go, oh, I can't believe they're charging that much, or this, that, and the other. And it's like, more people would buy them if they were cheaper. And it's like, that's not what they're doing. That's not the market they're after. They're after the person that wants the high end, that wants the, best of the best materials, the craftsman, the artisanship, everything that you talked about. That's the market they're after. So, somebody complaining that they're too high, it's like you're not their target demographic. And they'll admit that, like they don't mind telling you that.
That being said, it's not just like they just measure everything perfect and it's like works better than other guns. They also look great. So they have artisans working there, and they can take the characteristics you're looking for, the accessories and the features that you're looking for, and assemble them into the gun that has all the things you want. Or I'm sure you can have them play with it a little bit. And people that buy fancy stuff like that aren't necessarily buying things to be practical anymore, right? They're like, hey, you know what? I'm treating myself, or it's my anniversary or whatever. It's like I'm quitting or I'm retiring or whatever. So, these are what do you call that kind of occasion guns sometimes? Back when I used to do the podcast, I would give
Presentation guns.
presentation guns. Yeah, perfect. I would give night hawks to each of the co-hosts of the podcast each year. So the next one comes in and says, I lost my trigger spring on my Stevens Model 66B rifle. Any clues if I can get a new one, or where I can just say I can get a new one, but I'm assuming where to get a new one. So a Stevens Model 66B, is that something you guys are familiar with?
I'm not, but I'm checking my blog now. Give me just a
What's the name of it?
second.
The Stevens. Oh, Norwich.
Is it Norwich Gunworks? It's one of my go-tos. I'm driving right now, obviously, if you can't hear it. Yeah, there's a company I always check for parts like that, and a Stevens. They have some Stevens parts, and you might be able to go there. Old Russ Scrounger is another one. So there are a couple of websites that have old parts to them. And I wonder, is that some version of a Model 60 from Marlin? Just going by the numbers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking at it on a. I guess I could show it, but I'm not really screen sharing. But the it's just a wooden, like I would call it a youth target gun. It's got a little peep sight, and it's a bolt action.
Okay.
It may even have a cocker. It might even be like you do the bolt, and then there's a cock on the back, like the crickets are.
Well,
So
that
it's
would be
probably for little kids or something. But it's got a tubular magazine, so maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just for the way they designed it. They have to cock that thing back. Or maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like you have to cock that thing back. I can see pictures of it pulled back and not pulled back. But anyway, it's a decent looking. It looks like any other bolt action 22. There's nothing that unique other than the bolt is kind of long. Anyhow, what about the idea of just wrapping some tape around it and getting some piano wire and winding a new spring? If it's something that's super old and it's just a 22, and what can that spring possibly be doing that's so important? It's probably just pushing something out of the way.
Well, another thing is the copy also, because that might open you up. Is it a copy to a more popular that part?
Breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, it might be a copy of a more popular firearm, and you may be able to find the more popular firearms springs.
Yeah, a lot of times they take those guts because they know that they're common. They can get them from the same factory or something and wrap a different stock around it. And now it's their model, but in reality, they bought the parts from somebody else who already designed them and was just selling all the internal parts. So you can just go to those guns and grab those spare parts sometimes.
Yeah, because Glenfield was one company that did it. I think they were like a subsidiary of either Montgomery Ward or Western Auto. But those were those guns. They had less features than the Marlins. They have less features than the other companies, but it was the same parts. It was just a different name sold by these stores, these retailers.
Yeah, but wasn't that a Savage or a Stevens? I don't remember the model.
Stevens is one of the Savage companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stevens is the cheaper Savage basically. Yep. But that's not going to cross over with the Marlin or anything else. I mean, could a spring be modified? I mean, it's possible you could get one, but
that's the other thing is just having a bucket of springs or some kind of one of them divider trays where you just save your springs when you throw stuff away. Salvage parts and save a bunch of springs, and then you can sometimes get one that's pretty close.
Yeah. I would say numerous gun garage, Jack First gun parts are Japanese gun parts probably. And there's actually, that's what I was going to look. I was pretty sure that I put that in back in a blog post when I redid the website. But so if you go to clovertac.com, hit on content and articles and go through the gunsmithing stuff on the blog, then that'll have some different parts houses and stuff there. And I can almost promise you one of those is going to have, I don't care what you're looking for. One of those is going to have it.
Yeah,
What Numrich and those others, they buy factories when they go out of business, or when parts companies go out of business, they'll go in and buy their inventory and then just add it to their catalog. So these
big
are
gun shops or all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah, when a wholesaler goes out of business, so they're in the business of trying to reclaim these parts so they don't just go to a landfill, and so that you don't have to start rebuilding all these parts from scratch.
Yeah, Jack First reproduces a lot of stuff too. They'll get them and they'll reproduce them, and so does Gun Garage.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably getting easier and easier every day, huh? With 3D printers and scanners and everything.
Yeah, they'll reproduce a lot of things. Those two companies will too. So oftentimes you can find an original, but they also offer the originals are going to be used, of course, for the most part. And if you want something new, you'll have to go with one that they built, which I had any issues going that direction. So.
Well, like anything old, you're going to have, when it gets certain age, you're not going to want to just grab some modern part and replace modern parts, because now you've got a patchwork quilt instead of whatever original thing. So you'll just want to go easy or repair in a
But if you're talking a
restoration
spring,
way.
who's going to know the difference?
Very few people on a spring, you're right. But there are going to be people that know. So if it's a gun that matters, you're not just going to want to willy-nilly replace the spring because you got, who cares? Because in reality, 10 years from now, our grandkids hopefully are talking about, oh, grandpa's gun, and taking it apart, and they're going to definitely know what the original spring was supposed to look like. I'd be surprised if they don't know what your replacement spring was. Oh, they took the spring out of that and put it in here. That was common back then, because it fit. So I'm just saying, for that, it's not a big deal. And if it was a different part, I guess they I think I'm breaking up now. So this one came in from one of my YouTube videos. I did a video a long time ago on different handguard options, probably like 2009 or something. It was a long time ago. So just to kind of describe the different types, there back then it was quad rails and free float rails and those tubes. There wasn't a lot of other options yet. So the question is, how come some ARs have that delta ring on the barrel where you push down to change out the hand guards, and others you have to change the whole part out? And it doesn't look like the circle thing or the spring is on there. Are those delta rings just on older AR models? So I answered this one, so I'll let you guys throw in on this one. I mean, I cheated. I already had it. This one came in a week ago.
What was the question? Because I think I was breaking up and you were breaking up. I was in.
Oh, okay. Why are some ARs have a delta ring, or why do some ARs have a delta ring and others don't? Is that like an age thing? Was the question?
Yeah, it was the way they built them back then. I mean, generation the M16, M16A1, M16A2, all the way up. Yeah, I got an A4. I have an A4 and it has a delta ring. So yeah, that's that style. That was what the military had. That's what
they changed the shape of the hand guards, but the delta ring was still there.
Yeah, I mean, they even changed the shape of the delta ring between A1 and A2, but still serve the same purpose. But now, we have free flow hand guards that use the actual receiver. Ooh, that was close. The actual receiver to hold the hand guard in place, and pins and stuff like that. I mean, it's a great improvement to not have any wiggle in the rails for if you want to use laser as an aiming device. But truthfully, I have something set up in mind with a pick rail through my A2 rails, and that's good enough for a flashlight because I don't need the free float and I don't need the rigidity. But yeah, that's why they did it. That was the way they were built back then. They didn't have lasers for the rifles. And then when they started getting them, they came up with different ways to mount them. But yeah, it's an age thing. Now pretty much it's a style thing. You want one of the old school ones? There you go. They're still around. And I suggest if you want a clone, get on it. Even though, hey, pretty cool. H&R is now owned by Palmetto State, and they're putting them out now. H&R are making old school clones and selling them on Palmetto PSA's website.
That's cool because PSA is also making that Chinese AK, so now they're making old versions of both guns.
Yeah, PSA is coming through, and I mean, I say it all the time on the other show, but it's like, dude, we're in the golden age. You don't have to pay an arm and a leg for some original AKM styled gun from back in the day. You can get a modern one. It's brand new off the line, so it has all the features and everything you want in one of those old school guns. And you can do the same thing with the AR pattern rifles. You can, I mean, one of the ones I saw, they have A2 handguard with an M16A1 barrel. That's some like Air Force version or something they tried to get. It's just like, what? Yeah.
So you want to throw in on this Delta ring question, Clover? Do you know what ARs are? Do you know what a Delta ring is?
Yeah, I do. What was the question?
He's seen them next to the shotguns at the gun shop before. The question was about the Delta ring. How come some ARs have it and some don't? Is it an age thing?
Kinda. I mean, it kind of has to do with the handguard design. But yeah. So that's why some have it and some don't.
Yeah, at this point, it's just preference. Like Tony said, it was the original design, and then there's other options.
Floated handguards don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, that was the original, and that's when Stoner was still messing with aluminum and power in the design of the firearm. So that was just an afterthought. He was making such a light gun, he probably didn't think about mounting anything on it. He just thought, oh, you're not going to want to burn your hand holding it, so I'll put something there. And that was just a way to accommodate that he thought was clever, I guess. I don't know if he took it from some other gun, but I can tell you from experience, it's a pain in the ass. Delta rings suck pretty much, suck butts. They're a real pain in the ass. If they're good, they're super hard to take off. And if they're easy to take off, then your handguards rattle around to where they make noise or they're useless because they make noise and you can't put nothing on them. But whenever ARs became a thing, and that came with the end of the assault weapons ban that was prohibiting innovation, and then at that same time you had more economical tools in manufacturing, you had more people in the industry, so you had reason for innovation to happen and opportunity for innovation. So as everyone was thinking, like, we know how to mess with our 1911s and we've modified other guns, what else can we play with? And then AR-15s were sitting there. So boom, AR-15s were the golden opportunity for innovation. So anyway, when you had that happen, new handguards came on the scene all over the place. And part of it is what Tony's saying. You want to mount like a laser or a flashlight, you want a solid foundation, but you really want a solid foundation if you're putting like a scout optic or some kind of a red dot way out there. And occasionally people do that stuff. So if you want to mount something that's important out there, or a laser for something like aiming, then you want something that's either connected to or integral or connected or attaches to the upper receiver. And they've got options that the upper handguard is literally part of the upper receiver, and then options that bolt on or lock in, and now even versions that disconnect and fold, right? There's these folding AR options now. So the AR is just a platform that's getting wailed on, and the Delta Ring was one of the first things to go, mainly because it was such a suck-ass idea, and it just kept that whole front end of your gun useless for anything other than just grabbing onto it. And it's just given us so much more real estate that now you see guns like the Scar and stuff that actually evolved their whole gun to give you real estate up front so you can do things up there. But that's an interesting question. I don't know if you guys want to throw anything in else on that one. Baron is talking about having a Delta Ring tool, which essentially looks like some weird thing you'd use to pull your boots off, and you got to kind of wiggle it around. I mean, maybe he's got a different one that's different than the one I have, but the one I had, I mean, I guess it's like chopsticks or something. Some people can work it good, I guess. I never had a good. My technique was from wearing a mop suit back in the day, and it involved smashing the stock onto the floor and leaning into it, because that was the only way to do those back in the day. So if I can get on a table and get above it, but basically I put my whole body into it, and then, you can't compete against that. But you also have to get this weird two-step down with your fingers to be able to pull if they're being stubborn or just have no intention of falling off the gun. You have to get used to that. Can you use an armorer's wrench on a Delta Ring? Is there any part of that armorer's wrench, even the 8-in-1s or whatever they are, the 30-in-1s, that
No, none of them
work
I
on
have.
a Delta Ring?
No.
They may have some feature that I don't know about that's like some kind of lever, but I can't think of where you'd lever it off.
None of them I have. No, I know of do.
Because usually the thing that I'm thinking of kind of levers off of the magwell or something, or the upper receiver hinge or something, and then it kind of pins back, and it's, again, if you got it in a vise, no problem, but you don't even need the thing if you got it in a vise. If you're just holding the thing, you just got to get used to how to hold the thing really solid, and then either have really strong hands. If you got really strong hands, you can do it. And if you got a weak spring in there, you can do it easy. But I just think the AR-15, that was one of the first things people wanted to see get rid of. And the next thing was the trigger guard. People couldn't stand the trigger guard, even though that was awesome. And I don't know, probably the selector wasn't big enough. And then a couple of people got mad about the, whatever you want to call this, the mag release, or the slide release, or not slide release, what's it called, the bolt release.
The charging handles, when you get into optics, can be.
Yeah, that's true. Charging handle's always been a stupid part of an AR-15. There's no way to fake that. Underneath the handle was insanely dumb, and then putting it in the back like it was, I've never really liked the AR-15. I accept and deal with
And
it.
to get around,
but I don't like it.
Yeah, to get around that, depending on the optics you're running, you got to go with an extended latch, and then if you go with an extended latch and you're running a sling, it's digging into you. So
horrible idea. I've just working on them. So many of those extended latches tweak and warp because it's just aluminum channel that you're not supposed to tweak on. You're supposed to be pulling it straight back. That's why there's a T handle instead of a T, like a one ring or something. So it should be pulled straight back so you can really tweak them out and grind into your upper. Anyway, I hate those. I don't like extended latches either.
And meanwhile, I like the gun. I like the old school gun, the old school setup, because when you
did you cut out or did I cut out?
he dropped. Looks like.
I don't want to say I don't like it. I just don't like some elements of it.
It's gonna get hung up on it. Just everything you try to add to it made it a little more complicated. And if you left it alone, like M1A2, M1A1, and just ran it with iron sights and nothing else, you really didn't have any problem with it. But when you tried to modernize it and add a lot of other stuff, now you got a 1-to-8 on it. Well, guess what? When you put the red dot or the old school sight on the old school carrying handle, you didn't have to worry about it because the optic was on top of the carrying handle and it didn't get in the way of the charging handle. It's when you put the flat top on and brought the optic down to the top, now it got in the way. It was like all these changes. Well, you didn't change everything at once. You changed them one at a time and then ran into the problem as they were doing it. It's not the rifle's fault. It's how badly they designed it when they upgraded it, in my opinion.
And then you shoot the thing from like a regular gun with the stock fully extended for some reason. People like doing that. And then they want their optic way back by the charging handle. Well, if you stuck your nose on the charging handle and then your optic can be up in front of it, it's less of an issue. But people don't like getting up on there. Let's see. Question from G23. Can you use any AR upper to create a PCC? Well, any is a big ass word with AR. So anytime you say any with ARs, it's going to be no. So right off the bat,
Yeah.
22 caliber, no, right? But in reality, probably most, if it's a caliber that can go through the barrel. So you guys probably know better than me. Where does or is there a spot, or do they don't even bother wildcatting calibers that make? Is there a place where you get a caliber that's too big for the barrel, and the receiver has to change to like an AR-10 or something? Like I'm guessing like a 45 would be a big caliber, so maybe that barrel would be too thin. In a 5.56, you'd have to use a 308. But I mean that's not the case. I know they make 45 ones. So I don't think there's any constraints on caliber. So if you're just talking about the upper, the barrel is what makes it a PCC, and the magazine. The upper receiver just connects a barrel and a magazine together, right, with some feed ramps. So is there any issues there? Any conflicts? Oh, I'm not hearing it.
There's ways to do it. Like, are there ways? Can you? Yes, can you? You're right. The any there, any upper cannot be used. And are there? It's not really that any upper be used. It would be more by the time that because the way the bolt operates, you're talking about blowback versus direct impingement, because you're talking PCC, pistol caliber carbine. And so we're not talking about an alternative to rifle caliber. That's a whole different subject. So when you start talking about, short case, you start talking about the location of the ejection port in relation to where the magazine is sitting is going to be specific to the cartridge we're talking about, and all of that. The measurements, the
Oh, I see what
angles,
you're
the
saying. Like the math
openings.
of the opening might be
Yeah,
wrong
like
for
all of
like a
that's
short
gonna set.
caliber.
Yeah, all of that's gonna set weird. So while there are options to bolt options and other things that you can utilize in a let's just say a mil spec AR upper, you're way better off. It's going to run better. It's going to be more reliable and everything else. Having a dedicated PCC upper for that particular cartridge.
That's a good way to summarize it. So if we miss that or we're going at an angle on that, let us know. Baron brought one up from before, so I'm going to bring this up as a separate thing. But I think when we were talking about the changing parts, like on an old gun, if it's going to hurt the value of the old gun, it said when a gun becomes more of a piece of artwork that can't take abuse without breaking it, it loses all value to him. What do you think?
Well, I would say certainly entitled, but I think you're missing out on an aspect of firearm ownership that can be enjoyable. I've got one that I would consider a piece of artwork that I gave 400, 500 bucks for. That's worth 15, 1800 bucks right now. 5 or 6 years later. And I've never fired it because, yeah, I'm sure it probably would do fine to go out and fire it. But when you're talking about something that's a piece of artwork, can it be fired? I mean, the vast majority of the ones that would be considered collectible, right? And the Nighthawks are not considered collectible. Because that's kind of where this question or where this kind of stemmed from. High end stuff that's designed to be used is much different than an actual art piece or a collectible piece.
Or a rare piece that just exists
Right.
from a million years ago, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. So you're talking about you've got to separate those two out. It's two totally different things. But yeah, I mean, when you can pick up something like that and see it appreciate in value, and like, I get it. I understand. I get where he's coming from, and I understand what he's saying because I don't do wall hangers, right? Like, but that one is in there. I've got that one in there, and I know without a doubt, I've never fired it. It was fired at the factory, obviously, but
I'm gonna go get something. You guys keep talking.
I have no doubts in my mind it will fire and function just because of what it is. But I can't do one that's like missing this part or that part, then you hang it on the wall. Like, no, I can't do that kind of mess for sure. But yeah, when you have something like that, collection and investment it's just an aspect of firearm ownership. And some people, they can't handle it or they don't understand it or whatever. And I get it, and that's fine. You do you. Same way as, some people like the Glocks and some the CZs and some of the 1911s and whatever. Everybody's got their thing. They've got their opinions, and there's nothing wrong with any of that either way. But I think it's important to understand the various aspects of firearm ownership, and why some people like me would disagree with Baron. Tony, am I by myself?
I went to go get something. I don't know if Tony's still driving. If
he's roboting out, so he may be driving. It sounds like he's trying to talk, but
so is this got no value?
Oh, that's definitely got value, because that's.
Am I allowed to touch this?
Like I know what that is, and just from the interesting thing alone, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is a 1911 that was issued to somebody, probably in Fort Huachuca, down about an hour south of Tucson, towards the international border with Mexico, where they do drone flying and languages and so somebody was in there training, or back in the day, cavalry or something, because this is old, and this was found in the desert south of Fort Huachuca, and then it's all seized up and everything else rotted off of it. But that's U.S. issue, Army issue 1911. That's a relic, right? A rusty old found gun. Like, does that have no value? I mean, this is on my only 1911 anymore. Not really getting rid of this one.
Well, that doesn't have any value to me, right? Because, as I said before, I'm not into the whole wall hanger thing. But I can promise you it's got value to somebody. There's somebody, because it's an interesting piece. And that's the thing. Anytime you get an interesting piece, there's going to be, folks that value that.
Driving in and out. What's going on? Weird. Move back to the questions, and you guys want to answer this one.
All right.
Oh no, I'm super roboting. Is that me?
Well, I don't know. I know Tony was doing it earlier. Now you were, so I'm like, okay, am I the problem? Like,
no. My thing is even telling me I've got bad internet. I don't know. It happens every day, every week on this show.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens every day at this time, actually. But
right. That's what you can.
I'm a cable, so I gotta share my bandwidth with everybody. The question came into the Ring of Fire video, or one of my Ring of Fire videos, and the comment was, there's not many revolvers. Why not? How come Rossi and Charter Arms didn't make the list? So I know, but I'm going to let you guys get whack at that one if you want. Why Rossi and Charter Arms weren't on the Ring of Fire list. Am I breaking up, or do we have any answer?
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Yep, we got you now.
All right. Yeah, I just got in the house. The Ring of Fire, right? That was a whole list of what companies out of California or Nevada area.
California. Yep.
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, because they were making what, blowback operated 22s and 25s.
Yeah, basically copies of the Browning Pocket 25.
Yeah, so they got gone after kind of as part I don't know if it was part of it, but it was lawsuits, right? I mean, you know the whole story. Hell, I learned it from you. But I don't think Charter Arms and Rossi got caught up in that because they were revolvers, maybe. They were revolvers, and they were made out of. They didn't get that whole reputation of like pot metal guns. So that's probably why. Maybe they didn't end up in a lot of crime scenes like the other things did, or at least didn't get popularized. I mean, it doesn't have to be true when they outlaw something that said it was used in a lot of crimes, because that's definitely the case with the AR-15. It is not used in a lot of mass shootings, but they're acting as if it is. So I'm sure 20, 30 years, actually right now, if you Google it, it would make it seem like that was the problem, and it's not. So yeah, unfortunately, those companies got caught up in the politics and they got hit. And if you look at any business deep enough, you can find out where they did something incorrectly or not according to the book, and that was just used against them. Charter Arms also has changed hands a dozen times, well, a lot of times. It's not the same owners, and they went through their own process of quality control up and down, depends on when you check in with them. What
Yeah,
years
exactly.
the firearms were made, yeah. Because Charter Arms also made the AR-7, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the 22 folding kind of Air Force version. Well, another Armalite design from Stoner, and that one. I usually had one within arm's reach because I was trying to sell it for the longest time. I don't know, not right in front of me anymore, but yeah, they had. That's an example of a gun that had the tooling change hands to I think 4 different companies, or at least while it was in the hands of companies that changed names, the tooling had like 4 different names. I don't know if 4 different companies owned it or if it just changed names 4 different times, but it's the what do you call it? The story of a couple of different manufacturers or brands out there where the brand has a following and the machinery exists, but the person who's running the company dies or something happens and they want to retire, something, and they sell the tooling, the name, and the continue, and I guess the warranty work for the existing guns to another company, and then sometimes there's mergers or somebody starts up being a gun manufacturer from being something else, but that happens quite a bit, and then those properties, those entities get sold and resold and resold sometimes. In fact, it'd be interesting sometime to just think about the gun manufacturers that are still family owned. There are some, but not very many.
Yeah, because it's like any other business. Just because you had a passion for it and started it out doesn't mean your kids want to do it at all. Now you got to find someone else, maybe someone that worked for you to do it. Maybe they don't want to buy it. Now an outside entity comes in who thinks you can make money off of firearms. They jump in, realize, without the passion, this kind of sucks. They're in it for 5 years. Their QC or quality control drops. They sell it to somebody else. And your company can go through 2, 3 different owners under the exact same name. And then if you're buying one today, it's good quality. But if you purchased one, from 2005 to 2010, they were horrid. But if you bought one in the late 80s, it was good. Kind of like dealing with Remington. Depends on what years, depends on what quality you got of some of their guns. Colt too. Colt had that issue when they were going through strikes in the 70s. Their QC dropped off. I remember reading an article about a Python that didn't have rifling in the barrel. Not that it was shot out, it just didn't come with it.
And again, that comes from the batches and different what do you say, like quality controls. And if they're going to look at a batch of 100, and you're never going to look at 100, it just doesn't happen. So if there's a batch of 100 barrels that comes in, let's say there's 10 stacks of 10, they might be told pick one random out of each stack so that we're looking at 10% of the barrels and make sure they're good to go. And then somebody did that, and 3 of the barrels didn't have rifling. Well, if you didn't pick those 3 out of 100, you don't know. Nobody's going to, there might be some companies that say, you better make sure that this thing, I want to see every single item has been through quality control. But most of them are like, yeah, we're happy if 10%, or up to 7%, at the most like 30%. So that gives you 70% opportunity for something to slip through. So if a barrel without barreling, it obviously happens. So a barrel without barreling slips first up local quality control, whereas people for that stuff. Well, then they got no reason to check for barreling. If you're putting grips on it, why are you going to look for the barreling? You're putting sights on it. What do you care about barreling? Obviously, even when they're test firing it, it still worked, right? So they're like, all right, it passed. So, for quality, for construction, and for accuracy. So
it's because I know we started this off.
how much is that worth, though? Does that make it worth a million times more or worth less?
When I checked into the podcast, I heard you guys talking about Nighthawks and cost and why it costs so much. Was watching a video, not a Vogue. What was the other guy's name from Gun Blast that passed away? Anyway, he did a tour of the Diamondback company and their AR line. And the guys there, who are really nice people, I've met them and hung out with them. They were talking about they test fire every gun. Well, they test fire every gun between 3 to 5 rounds. The guy loads the mag up, shoots it, gun goes bang every time. All right, it's good to go. That's checking every gun, but that's not checking every gun to the details. Well, did the thing, is it shooting accurately? Is it going to the, point of aim, point of impact? Is the tip of the barrel messed up and is this thing sending rounds sideways? You know what I mean? Like, no, but they made sure every gun functioned at least for a few rounds, but it's not a long-term inspection. Well, when you buy something that's custom made, I'm making an assumption that they make sure that thing works.
Oh yeah.
Some of them even tell you what ammo works best in it. The accuracy you can possibly achieve with the best ammo.
So
a lot of different things. Go ahead.
So yeah. So I'll give an example. Lionheart, who makes the Regulus, they brought that over, took over that from whatever that Korean company, called it and changed it to Regulus, and then now they've got the Vulcan out. I actually got last year to tour their facility, and at that time they didn't want me filming, but it was pretty amazing the type of machinery they had, and for such a small company. Of course, they work in really small batches, but the amount of hands-on and measuring, and it's interesting not just with the firearms, but also the same guy owns a survival gear company that it's fire starters and some different things that they make, and they even have people measuring. They've got measuring devices and are measuring by hand, like everything that comes off the line and all that kind of stuff. Well, then he takes me into the QC room, the quality control room, and there's no telling how many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe even millions for all I know, of measuring equipment is in the QC room. And we're talking about like X-ray sonogram style machines and laser measuring machines, and it is sick. Every minute little angle and surface area detail, and it can detect impressions like to the umpteen jillionth micromillimeter and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? So and
Well,
so
a lot of times how they'll keep their processes running, and they'll they can tell, oh, if we're seeing some machine marks here, we know that bit's wearing out, or that
catch it before it's a huge
fixture
problem.
is holding too tight or something, right? Let's put some cloth in there. Yeah. So they and then that's part of ISO and whatever, the different classifications or whatever that's called of manufacturing. So I know what you're talking about. That's the difference between the levels of company, right? Like the bigger the company, the more worried about they are of that.
Yeah, well, if you're a huge company that has to put out the volume, right? Like it's a risk, I guess, maybe sort of like a risk mitigation factor type thing. And like Tony said, the vast majority of companies out there are not, what I would consider a boutique company with a lot of hands-on. And so function test is what they're going to do. Like, does it go bang? And when it goes bang, does it break something? Does it fall apart? No, it doesn't. Okay, cool. Send it out the door. Right. And then if there's, inherent little issues, those are typically going to be one-off problems. And they just handle that after the fact with service and support. And it's like I said, it's just a risk and mitigation issue where, the other companies, because they do that and that's part of their regular routine. Again, what we talked about when the topic of Nighthawk first come up, that's hands-on labor is what you're paying for. And that includes not just the hands-on labor to build it, but also to test, to measure, to check everything over before it goes out the door and make sure it's right.
I mean, if you look at some of the CZs, depends on which ones you get. They have 25-meter target that they package in the firearms. They still do that, Clover?
Dude, I have never bought a new CZ, so I couldn't tell you.
Me neither. I mean, my CZs are all used because
the only two commercial that are not Milsurp CZs that I own are both of those were used, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I buy mine used too because I'm sorry. It's great and all, and if you can catch them on a great price right now, they have a bunch of the CZP10s are on crazy sale, like sub $400 for the F and $299 for the M. So I mean, but I haven't purchased a new gun straight out the box since my SR22.
I've never liked wearing skinny jeans, so I've never bought a CZ.
You look lovely in some skinny jeans, dude.
So Jeff Quinn is the person you're talking about from Gun and Blast.
Oh, and let me throw this out about Lionheart. I spoke at SHOT Show in 2020 at the Unity Conference where it was a bunch of activists and others that are in the firearms industry talking about how to grow the firearm industry. And it was in the Venetian and in one of those rooms, and Lionheart was the only firearms manufacturer to actually attend.
Wow.
So props to them for actually coming out, introducing themselves to me and had a conversation with those guys. But they were really interested in growing the firearm industry itself. And they were the only ones that showed up. So they're different. They built different.
They're a very small company. Again, I've been to their place, and I don't want to tell all their secrets or give major details, but the vast majority of the people in that building are on the survival gear side of the business. As far as the firearms, I would be, and it may have changed since I was there last, but just general estimate, I would be surprised if there were, counting secretary's phone answers and everybody on the firearm side, I would be surprised if there was a dozen employees. So, and that's what you get a lot of times is people don't understand. They're like, oh, well, there's this big name, right? And it sounds big to them. A firearms manufacturer. Oh, they're a firearms manufacturer. And they think, oh, they've got hundreds of employees or something. It's like, yeah, sometimes that's not the case. I mean, there's only a few. And then when you've got only a few and you've got all of that hands-on and inspection and building and testing and everything going on, things get expensive pretty quick.
And if you're
you're not making it up in volume with the expensive stuff, right? Like there's no way. How do you make up time? The only way you can make up time is to hire more people, and that unfortunately costs more money. So it's almost self-defeating, right?
But also keep in mind that when these companies get hit with lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits, because someone used their gun to commit a crime, that's why they had to put that Protection Act into place, because again, these are smaller companies. Everyone is an FN, you know what I mean? So they can't absorb that hit. And these are small companies. They were actively trying to put out of business as a gun control tactic. And that's why those laws were put in place, because
Well, then it's also anti-capitalist. So by putting it in place to protect the gun companies, which were the ones being attacked, that industry was being attacked. There's nothing stopping them from attacking the blade industry or the second-story building industry or the swimming pool industry when they find a fault with it, or they're just trying to kill capitalism one thing at a time. We're in late-stage capitalism. How often do you hear that now?
Well, negligence is a totally different thing, right? Like, and that's what you got to realize too. They're not saying that if somebody gets a firearm from a big name company, whatever it might be, and they're out on the range and through a manufacturing flaw, that person, injures themselves or somebody. We're not saying that the company is not liable. The company should 100% be liable at that point. But when somebody buys that firearm, or honestly any other tool, and they go out and they do not use it as intended, and somebody gets hurt, well, that's not the fault. I mean, if everything works like it was supposed to work, then the manufacturer's out of it at that point. Like, there's no reason to drag them into it.
Well, the reason is to marginalize gun ownership and
Yes,
to
absolutely.
suggest a lot of stuff that's implied there. But anyway, that's been into the 2A side of it.
Yeah.
I was just going to hit the rest of that. The Saturday Night Special question, the full answer would be that Rossi is South America someplace, Brazil. So it doesn't count because it was the Ring of Fire is specifically was a bunch of guns that were created in the United States, specifically in Los Angeles, in reaction to the 68 Gun Control Act, which stopped the importation of these kind of guns, small pocket, small caliber, lightweight, inexpensive guns that our grandmas were carrying around and our grandpas would carry home with because they got paid in cash.
The RGs and the Romes and
all the stuff that was being made in Spain and Italy and Brazil, mainly copies of popular guns that were made by Colt and Smith & Wesson and whoever. So, and then Charter Arms is from Connecticut, and they make quality guns. They make guns that are very simple. They have like 32 parts or something. They're very non-complicated revolvers, where a lot of other revolvers have many more parts in them. So for a lot of reasons, or for those reasons, I think, and others, like Tony was talking about the change of hands and ownership and quality control, there's been different value placed on Charter Arms, but I've always appreciated their small 44s, like smart 44 Magnum revolver for defense is legit. And
I had a little Bulldog in 44 Special it was pretty solid.
And that's exactly what it implies, a little strong Bulldog to have with you. So I really respect them. But anyway, that's why there's no revolvers, is because the Ring of Fire is just specifically the guns around Los Angeles that were made emulating the Browning pocket, the 25 ACP pocket Browning design, which is a blowback. They just scale them up for larger calibers. There was actually some Derringers, some Remington-style Derringers, but they never bothered with revolvers. I think mainly because Rome, like you mentioned, and whatever turned into RG-10 or whatever. They just started to import all the components and assemble them in Florida. And complied with the stupid 1968 Gun Control Act, because that was just a big scam to marginalize guns as the scapegoat for the failed policies that created the violence.
Well, and make no mistake, they were after, they had a certain price floor, right, that they were after with those firearms as well. That was the whole point. And again, labor is expensive, and a revolver is going to require more labor, without a doubt.
And I've got a bunch of little rooms and stuff. They are assembled. They're not handcrafted like any revolver.
Yeah, but it still requires more time to assemble a revolver than
for sure. Oh yeah, for sure.
Generally speaking, anyway,
definitely.
We should say. Yeah.
Even the simplest ones, and these are definitely simple. They're essentially like not much more than a cap gun was, because they have the same kind of mechanisms, are stronger.
Right. Yeah.
Well, let's see. We're right about an hour. Should we keep going? I'm kind of flexible. I just wanted to start this earlier than later because I got to go do something here that does have a.
Yeah, I've got to jump here shortly. Very shortly.
Yeah, me
Okay,
too.
well then we've got a couple other questions that I'll leave for next week, Ben. And
yeah.
thank everybody for joining us. That'll give us a chance to chat off here a little bit. I'll be back next week. If you got gun questions, go to askgunquestions.com. There's just a form there you can fill out with the question. I'm not harvesting emails or anything. You don't need, I don't even know if there is a place for an email. You probably can put it there if you want to, but I'm not asking for it. I never, just FYI, it's been there for a long time. I'd never go back and answer people via email. We'll answer you on this show. And that's what this is all about. Thanks for joining us. We all have Patreons. Tony has a PayPal going right now, so you can get to train and learn, which is a pretty awesome event held by KD each year in Missouri, where he brings a bunch of content creators and a bunch of people from the firearms industry together to train and learn from each other. So for 3 days, a bunch of people who are interested in training and learning do that. They share their knowledge set, their knowledge bases, and their skill sets, and they have 3 days worth of camaraderie. So unlike some of the other events that we attend throughout the year in the industry, where the agenda is on content creation or blah, 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 or making contacts or this and that, this is specifically focused on training and collaboration. It only costs like $300 or $350 or something for 3 days, and it's not necessarily all encompassing, but it's best value into a Rich. He's doing things on his own dime. So you can go to diversityshoot.com and use the PayPal or go over to the Eventbrite and buy a bunch of tickets for upcoming events, but let them know that you're just buying them to donate. Clover's got his channel and his website he mentioned earlier, clovertech.com, from it, and that helps him out and gives you some interesting things. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.